So my name is Chad Kubanoff. I'm here with Ken Yung from Yung Global. I reached out to Ken a few weeks ago because I always get questions about people who want to travel to Vietnam, want to live in Vietnam, and I don't have those answers. And I think Ken would probably have those answers for you. And maybe we could just, if you can introduce yourself a little bit about what you do, how long you've been here.
Sure, great. Thank you very much, Chad.
Yeah.
My name is Ken Yung. I've been in Vietnam for about 10 years. I'm a California licensed attorney for 15 years now. And I specialize in mergers and acquisitions. But of course, moving here in 2013, we opened the office to do foreign direct investment and helping expats live, invest, and retire in Vietnam. So I've been here for 10 years. I have a family here, and I've run a few other businesses as well. Mm-hmm. So I have a little bit of business experience along with the actual legal side of it.
Yeah.
I really enjoy living here, and I enjoy meeting other folks like yourself to get a different audience base that understands and wants to live in Vietnam. Short-term, long-term, travel, and then of course investing and retiring.
I've heard from Ken too, so his business experience in Vietnam is vast with many different fields. So there's a lot of experience and expertise in those fields, so that's great. And in terms of Yung Global, the channel, what do you tend to speak about on that channel?
Yeah, so it's exactly what a lot of folks like yourself who are contacting us is. We focus on how to live, retire, invest in Vietnam, and then also to do business, foreign direct investment into Vietnam.
Right.
But one of the things that we do a lot is actually Vietnam citizenship, right? Helping Vietnamese overseas to be able to come back to Vietnam and buy properties, invest. Then hopefully we're pushing to do citizenship by investment programs for non-Vietnamese as well. And then retirement visas. So some things are very important for long-term stay in Vietnam to be competitive with other Southeast Asian countries that already have those visas.
All right, so I have a few weeks ago I asked my audience any questions that they have for me to relay to Ken. I have them. Some of them I put together and kind of reorganized and kind of clarified the questions. Some are a little bit more specific. So we'll go through them if you're ready.
Yes,
okay.
I am ready.
The first, we'll kind of do this like subject by subject, and we'll just kind of start with the lighter stuff, which is just kind of visas. And so what visas are currently available for the tourist or the traveler coming to Vietnam? What's the longest they can get? How do they stay here?
Sure. So really, after August 15th, the law changed a lot in the immigration policies of this year.
So it's recent.
And prior to that, so I've been doing it for 15 years, so prior to that it was different. And then during COVID, it changed dramatically. Now it's reopening to go back to what it was prior to COVID.
Okay.
So I picked the date of August 15th. Foreigners of roughly about 80 countries around the world are on the list for the e-visa.
Okay.
So the e-visa allows you 90 days, multiple entry, and you can apply online through the immigration portal. Southeast Asian countries, already with the ASEAN Free Trade Agreement, can just visa on arrival. Okay. And they can get between 15 to 45 days to stay in Vietnam without having to pre-apply.
They could still just leave the country and come back just to get another 45 days if they wanted to?
Yes, correct.
Okay.
Correct.
Okay. And is there any sort of longer term that's possible for the traveler? Is there a retirement visa available or anything like that?
So currently right now, Vietnam doesn't have a specific retirement visa. But like I said, we're trying to propose it to the government to make those changes. Oh, you're trying to propose it to the government? Oh, wow, that's cool. Correct. So we've analyzed and done for other countries such as Thailand, Malaysia, even some of the European ones as well. Yeah. So if that comes through, then it'll be really great because I think Vietnam is at the point where it is a retirement destination for many foreigners.
Absolutely.
But some of the longer term ones are, it'll go back to the previous law of immigration prior to COVID, which gives you 1 year multiple entry visa, which US citizens can have.
But that's not current yet?
Currently, it's not available right now. The longest is the 90-day e-visa.
You foresee that 1 year coming back?
Yes, for sure. Because it was before.
Okay.
Yeah, it will come back.
Okay.
Just the beginning of time period, probably looking, I would say sometime next year, it'll come back for the 80 countries on the list.
Is there any sort of workaround for the retirement person that wants to stay here longer term until the 1 year comes, or is there any other options that they can do?
Yes, so we give them a couple alternative options, such as what's called the DT4 investor visa. Okay. So they invest anywhere up to 3 billion VND, which is about 140,000 US dollars.
Up to 3 billion?
Up to 3 billion.
Okay.
Yeah, but the minimum from our experience is about 50,000 US dollars.
Okay.
Where they can open a restaurant, open up a consulting business, you can open up a YouTube channel. Okay. And you open up a company in Vietnam, you invest the amount, and then you can apply for the visa. It gives you 1 year. And you can stay as long as you want, and you renew every single year. That's one long-term strategy, and you just renew as long as you have a operating business.
Okay.
It has some profit, and you
Okay.
report your taxes properly.
Okay. And at the 1-year renewal, do they have to leave the country, or can they renew within the country?
They can stay within the country. They
Great.
don't have to.
That's
so
great.
usually 90 days before the expiration, we'll start the paperwork to renew for them. So at the year mark, they already have a new visa in place.
I see.
But let me ask you, are there your audience also have Vietnamese overseas who watch your channel
Tons.
as well?
Tons.
Okay.
Tons.
So I'll speak to that as well because
Great.
they have a special exception for Vietnamese overseas
Okay.
where you can get what's called a 5-year visa exemption.
Okay.
So that one is if you have certain Vietnamese roots or Vietnamese names,
Yes.
or you do a business in Vietnam,
Or you're married to Vietnamese, right?
or that one has a different visa that's
Oh, okay.
much better.
Oh, okay.
I can talk about that
Okay.
later as well.
Sure.
But just being overseas, no marriage to Vietnamese citizen, then you can get a 5-year visa exemption
Yes.
that allows you multiple entry for 5 years,
Yes.
6 months at a time, and then you just have to leave and come back.
Interesting.
And that one's very lax because it's saying you're a semi-Vietnamese citizen because
Yes.
you're of Vietnamese descent.
Okay.
So that's a special treatment for Vietnamese overseas.
Okay.
Yeah.
Cool. So that leads into the next question too. So if you're married to a Vietnamese national, what is the best visa that someone can go for in that situation?
Yes, so you can get a TRC, so temporary residence card, based on marriage to a Vietnamese citizen.
Okay.
So the first time is usually they'll give you about 2 years. And then as a renewal, you'll get 3 years at a time. And that
Okay.
allows you full stay in Vietnam. You don't have to leave at any time. And your children of the marriage can also get the TRC.
Has there ever been challenges where they have the 2-year and then they go to renew for the 3rd year? It's just always, the renewal point is always a point of nervousness. Is that ever an issue that comes?
Yes.
Obviously, if you're not a criminal or don't commit any
Yeah.
crimes or anything, does it ever get restricted for some reasons?
Yes, so there's a few reasons. One is determine whether the marriage is still
Legitimate.
legitimate.
That makes sense.
Right?
Yeah.
2 is if you committed a crime or if you've done anything in Vietnam.
Right. That's valid.
And
that
then
makes sense.
3 is to challenge whether the initial filing was legitimate,
Okay.
right? But aside from that, if you still if you remain married, you have your birth certificates for your kids, or
Yeah.
you just had kids
Yeah.
during that time, then you'd be able to renew. Not an
Okay,
issue.
so that seems all fine.
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah.
We do have a lot of VQ viewers, so in terms of like dual citizenship, what are the challenges? How difficult is that for somebody to get? Is that common?
So we've actually, in the last 15 years, we've done about 200 Vietnam passports for Vietnamese overseas. I think we might do the most,
Oh,
but
yeah.
we reject 80% of the files because of various reasons, and I'll tell you the requirements. So you need to either have a birth certificate
Yes.
in Vietnam
Yes.
or a birth extract to show that you were born in Vietnam.
What's a birth
important.
extract?
So birth extract just shows you don't have an actual birth certificate because many people
Yes.
were born at home,
Yes.
were born in small cities.
Or
So we have clients
chaotic
anywhere,
environments, yeah.
yeah, from 1949 all the way up until 1999. We have some who were born later as well.
Yeah. My mother-in-law doesn't even know her birthday. She
Yeah.
doesn't. Yeah, she's just born in the village.
Yeah,
it's
so
interesting.
there's a whole slew of issues, especially when they came to the U.S.,
Yeah.
why they wouldn't be able to get it.
Uh-huh.
But what we do is we do a full assessment. We look at your documents, and we help you collect them circumstantially in order to submit to the consulate.
Okay.
And we don't recommend doing it here in Vietnam. You actually do with the consulate in your country.
Okay.
It's much easier
Right.
through the Department of Foreign Affairs.
Okay, so any of that you would recommend you do that before you come to Vietnam, and I have direct experience with that, and I agree. Do it in your home country.
Yes, they're
Absolutely.
more conducive, they're more helpful because their job is to help those citizens to come do business in Vietnam.
Okay. If someone didn't have their birth certificate and they wanted to contact you about getting, what was the term you used?
Birth extract.
Birth extract. What information would they need to gather or have for you to move forward with them?
So we're actually very limited in our ability to get it. I wouldn't say we do it all over Vietnam, all the
Okay.
provinces. We're very strong in the bigger provinces,
Okay.
like Ho Chi Minh City, Cần Thơ, Đà Nẵng, and Hanoi. But you would need to know where the hospital you were born, or if you were born at home, then you need to have contact with the midwife. Usually it's a midwife delivery who
Wow.
can do, and then you go to the local government to request a birth extracts, bringing these witnesses saying, I gave birth to this particular person in this province, but they don't have a birth certificate. I would swear that they were born by me.
Wow, that's so interesting.
Yeah, so it's actually extremely, extremely difficult. And that's the reason why we actually don't accept 80% of the folks who want us to do.
Very interesting.
Yeah.
Okay. Are there any disadvantages to getting dual citizenship?
Yes, there are quite a few.
Okay.
We made quite a few videos on those as well about citizenship. Is depending on which passport you use when you enter Vietnam,
Yes.
then that country has jurisdiction to protect you,
I see.
or a lack of jurisdiction to protect you. I'll give a very prime example.
Yes.
If you have U.S. citizenship passport and you have Vietnamese passport, and you come into Vietnam on your U.S. passport,
Yes.
and if something happens, then the U.S. Consulate embassy will protect you.
Yes.
You're a citizen, you came in as U.S. citizen. However, if you come in on your Vietnamese passport and you have a stamp, then you ask for help from the U.S. consulate, then they'll ask, no, you came in as a Vietnamese citizen. We don't have the jurisdiction to protect you.
Understood.
But we have the discretion if we wanted to protect you.
Interesting.
So that is a big disadvantage for Vietnam. Most of our clients, there's a military requirement in Vietnam, but most of the folks that we do it for are over 18 years old, so you don't run into that issue of military service. Other disadvantages would be Vietnam changed its laws, and you got to be careful, and this is mostly for Vietnamese overseas. In 2021, Vietnam's law requested that if you submit documents with a government agency and you have a Vietnamese passport, you're required to use your Vietnamese passport or your Vietnamese identification and information. And here's a prime example that happens a lot. A Vietnamese overseas comes to Vietnam, marries a Vietnamese woman. He has a Vietnamese passport as well. So when he goes to submit for the birth certificate of the child, it will ask, what is your citizenship? So you have to say, I have a Vietnamese passport, and so the father's citizenship is Vietnamese and the mother's citizenship Vietnamese.
Yes.
However, once you do that and you want to do a consular report of birth abroad as a U.S. citizen, they will ask, how come you're a Vietnamese citizen and you're requesting U.S.?
Yes.
Now you have to use a whole other level of proof that you're a U.S. citizen in order to prove that. So that one is a prime example. I actually went through it myself. So I did it for a lot of my clients, and that was right the time they changed the law due to the proliferation of Vietnamese passports for Vietnamese overseas.
Wow.
So that's a very prime example for Vietnamese overseas who are planning to get Vietnamese citizenship and planning to get married here, meeting their significant other and having children.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Interesting. There's always a challenge. There's always something. I think that's all the questions I had in terms of visas. Is there anything in particular you need to elaborate on in that way?
I think the one thing I always want to make clear for the Vietnamese overseas audience is having a Vietnamese passport does not mean you're a full citizen of Vietnam.
Okay.
Whereas in having a U.S. passport means you've gone through all the requirements to become a U.S. citizen.
Right, that's my assumption.
Yes. So so I want to make that clear for your audience is having the Vietnamese passport is only one of 3 documents you need to be a full citizen.
I see.
The second document is you need to have a digital family book, hộ khẩu, and the final one is your national ID, right? In order to buy land in Vietnam, you have to have a national ID to buy as a local. So with your Vietnam passport, you cannot. But you can do other things with your Vietnam passport.
So if you have your Vietnamese passport, do you have to go forward? Like maybe you don't want full Vietnamese citizenship. Is that could be good in some ways, if depending on your situation, right? I would imagine there could be advantages to that.
Well, it's very hard to get the current national ID.
Oh, okay.
Căn cước công dân is very, very difficult. It's not like in the States you go to the DMV and you get this California ID.
Yes.
Yeah, they have to go through a whole search. Because Vietnam is going through a phase of digitizing and then having the chip to follow everybody, and they'll have their similar to the social security number in the States.
Yeah.
So it's actually very difficult to get. So if you just want to travel in and out of Vietnam, not to do too much business and stay for a long time, you do the passport.
And if you get the passport, you can stay in Vietnam as long as you want?
Correct.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
And you can travel to Southeast Asia, and there are 44 countries that you can get visa on arrival.
If you get the passport and you're not full citizenship, do you still have military service to follow or be obliged to go into?
To be honest with you, I do not know for sure.
Okay.
I can't tell you that requirement because our clients are over 18
I understand.
and they don't have to. But that's something I would love to research and get back to your audience.
Okay.
But that's something I actually can't tell you what the answer is.
Interesting. Very interesting. If a Vietnamese is married to, this is a specific question. If a Vietnamese is married to a U.S. citizen, is there any special tourist visa for the Viet citizen to easily travel to the U.S.?
So unfortunately, at this current time, no.
Okay.
It's actually a detriment. So you got different stages. Either your boyfriend, girlfriend, you are engaged but not married,
Yes.
or you have a marriage license in Vietnam.
Yes.
Okay, it will put you in different categories.
Yes.
Because when you apply for the U.S. tourist B1, B2 visa,
Yeah.
you have to, if you're already married, then you have to say you have a relative in the U.S.
Okay.
So the question is, do you have any relatives in the United States?
Yes.
Parents, children, brother, sister, or husband and wife,
Yes.
spouse. If you say yes, you will be automatically denied.
Bummer.
And here's the reason why. The U.S. consulate says, if you already are married to a U.S. citizen, you can come to the States via the spousal visa.
Uh-huh.
And you need to apply. That takes between 12 to 18 months.
Oh,
so
wow.
therefore, you already have intent to immigrate. We will not give you a B1,
I
B2
see.
non-immigrant visa. Okay?
I see.
So that's why it's very difficult. We have a lot of frustrated clients who
Yeah, that's
ask
a
us
long time to wait.
Yeah, they just want to come and see the family,
Yes.
meet the parents.
Yes.
Especially if their boyfriend and girlfriend were serious. Or if they're already actually engaged and they want to do maybe a small ceremony, meet the
Right.
family. Your chances is very, very low in order to get the visa.
Bummer.
Yeah, so what we do is if your boyfriend and girlfriend, don't say that you're going with your boyfriend and girlfriend. Just say you're going on a tourist or a business trip, and don't go with that person, because you can do adjustment of status, which is what the U.S. tries to avoid for foreigners when they try to come to the U.S.
You said don't go together, meaning fly different airlines, different planes?
No, when you apply, because they'll ask you, so the DS 160 form will ask you a lot of questions.
Yeah.
They'll ask you questions like, who are you traveling with?
Yeah.
Where are you going? What is your contact information?
Okay.
And if you list your
Oh, yeah.
boyfriend or girlfriend, they know you have intentions.
I see.
So I actually tell them not to.
Wow.
So that's a whole slew of advice and information regarding getting tourist visa to the U.S. It seems simple, but it's actually very difficult.
Bummer. That's very challenging.
Yes, it is. But it can be done. It can be done.
Okay.
We've done it for quite a few of our clients to justify them going over there for some business purposes or purely tourism,
Okay.
or even using a tour company.
Okay. If someone already is a dual citizen, like this person, for example, is French Canadian, and they still have Vietnamese lineage, can they get a Vietnamese passport as well?
Yes.
Or can they get a Vietnamese citizenship as well? Can they be triple citizen? Is that possible?
Yes. So that's very specific. Vietnam allows multiple citizenships.
Okay.
The U.S. technically does not,
Yeah.
and Canada does not. They only recognize one loyalty to the Constitution.
Okay.
However, from a jurisdictional standpoint, they will not enforce it, with a few exceptions of a few countries around the world,
Okay.
like Germany, Japan, Singapore, and Peru,
Okay.
where they don't allow you to have more than one citizenship.
Okay.
Yeah, so you can have 3.
All right, so let's move on to jobs then. Can somebody, while visiting Vietnam, find out they love this place, want to stay? Can they look for a job while they're here?
As a foreigner coming into Vietnam,
Yes.
you are permitted to look for jobs. That's
Yes.
not an issue. But if you're actually you have a job offer,
Yeah.
then you would have to work towards a work permit in order to work in Vietnam.
Okay.
Or you can just be treated as a foreigner and work under a foreign contract,
Okay.
foreign contractor, which is subjected to tax withholdings
Okay.
and VAT.
Okay.
So you can work as a foreigner in Vietnam under a company, but it doesn't give you a work permit to stay longer.
The work permit, can they get that while here on their e-visa?
Yes, technically yes.
And the work permit's not like a work visa; it's a different thing. Or business visa; these are separate things.
They're separate things.
And so, what's a work? Do they still they get a work permit while they're on their e-visa, or how does that work?
So if they're coming on their e-visa, which is a temporary stay,
Yes, the
they can,
90-day stay.
they can apply for their work permit,
Yeah.
which requires a company to sponsor them with a offer or a contract,
Okay.
and they have to submit. Then they get a work visa,
Okay.
right? Then when the 90-day expires, they're now just on their work permit.
Well, I don't understand. Is the work visa and the work permit the same thing, or they're different things?
People use it interchangeably.
Oh,
I
okay.
would say it would be the same thing.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
The ability to work under a company.
Okay.
The business visa is different.
Okay. If somebody was interested in looking for a job, do you have any recommendations or methods for them to find jobs in Vietnam?
So yes, so we kind of we work with a few HR companies for executives who want to find executive positions in Vietnam. But if they also want to do I say middle management and lower positions, then we have a few sites that we use, such as jobhopping.com, which are more tech-based positions. Vietnam Works is generally, but it's actually not so conducive for foreigners. It's mostly for Vietnamese job placements. We work with a few like TalentNet, HR placement companies. We also work with 40-hour work week. They also help with placements as well. And then Robert Walters, it's a global job placement company.
Okay.
So depending on different levels that that they're trying to find in Vietnam, then we help them with different sites. But personally, we don't do it ourselves.
Is there a specific area that is looking for foreigners right now? If you're in that field, do you have a good chance of something?
Yes. So right now, I'd say in banking, but it has to be management and above.
Okay.
So banking, technology.
Okay.
So even if you're a programmer or UI UX developer and then manager, definitely need it. Hospitality. A lot of the hospitality restaurants, hotels, the different groups are looking for folks. Of course, English. English is always going to be sought after.
Yeah, absolutely.
As well. And then I would say within marketing is a little bit tougher, but some marketing positions are also available right now in various different industries because of the creativity and the exposure to the international market.
Okay.
And then manufacturing.
Okay.
So warehouse manager and above, systems analysts, engineering are sought after for foreigners working in Vietnam.
Okay. Do you need to have a certificate of some kind for any job? Is there leniency, or is there certain areas that don't require certification?
So the main requirement for the work permit under a company is you have to have a bachelor degree or at least 5 years of experience in an industry to waive out of the bachelor degree requirement.
Okay.
If you're teaching English, then you need to have your TESOL or your TOEFL. TESOL, I'm sorry.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, no TOEFL.
Okay.
Just your TESOL, and then you're teaching certificates. So the more degrees you have, the more likely you'll be able to get your work permit after you've gotten offered the job.
Okay. Can a tradesperson start a business here? Can a mechanic start a shop? Can a carpenter start a shop? Something like that here? Open the business. Can they open the business?
So yes, most of those trades positions are not required you to have certification. So therefore, it's just another business operating in that area. Then as a foreigner, you're not limited. You can actually open those particular companies in Vietnam, 100% foreign owned.
Oh, really?
Yes.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
All right, we'll go into that a little bit later then.
Yeah, we go into like the specific areas where you need licenses versus areas that you don't need licenses or restrictions to foreigners.
Okay. This is just someone specifically asking about nursing. Are there nursing jobs available? Can a nurse open their own practice in terms of like the medical field?
No. So the medical field is extremely limited for foreigners in Vietnam and has to go through the Ministry of Health. So nursing, doctors, even cosmetic surgery or any of those procedures ending with the Ministry of Health is very limited for
child care
foreigners.
Too? No. Okay.
No,
Separate,
no.
Totally separate.
No,
Okay.
no. So invasive, non-invasive surgery,
Okay.
cosmetic dentistry, all of those areas that require licensing and education is limited for foreigners.
And how about if they were just looking for a job position as a nurse or a doctor? Is that possible?
To be honest, I think depending on which country they're coming from, the license is not transferred to Vietnam. And two is the pay will not be anywhere close to what you would get paid over there. Even at the international hospitals, the biggest hospitals will not pay you anywhere close to what you would get in your country.
Okay.
So therefore, practically, it would not make sense.
It doesn't make sense, right? Yeah. Okay.
Unless you're opening up your own clinic.
Yeah.
So we have many examples, like Dr. Wade Brackenberry opened up an American Chiropractic Center, and it's done really well. So if you could become an owner and use your license, even when chiropractic was not recognized in Vietnam 20 years ago, he opened it. In that sense, you can do business under your license, but you'd have to tweak it under the Ministry of Health that you'd have to have local as well. Similar to the legal profession.
Okay.
Like, as a California attorney, I can't open up a firm here unless if I have 2 local Vietnamese attorneys with me.
I see.
Yeah.
Okay. I think that's all we had for jobs. Is there anything else you wanted to elaborate in that field?
I think there are many, I would say specifically about the Vietnamese American or the Vietnamese diaspora overseas community, is there's a lot of job openings right now for middle and upper management executive level for Vietnamese overseas. because they understand the language, they partly understand the culture, and it's really communication between the local employees and the international employees.
Yep.
So that middle management position is very sought after.
I can see that being very valuable.
Right. In fact, Robert Walters came up with a program, and it was from one of their managers who was a Vietnamese, went to Singapore to study, and then she came back and she wasn't able to find a suitable position for herself. She went into Robert Walters and created this program. It's called the Coming Home For Good. It sounds funny, but it's actually, they did a survey. They say 84% of Vietnamese overseas want to come back to Vietnam.
Yeah.
Her name is Vicky Chung.
Yeah.
She's a senior international candidate manager.
Yeah.
So all she finds and creates positions for Vietnamese overseas to come back here. So if you are really looking to come back as a management or executive and you have about 5 to 10 years experience abroad, it would make sense for you to come back and work for many Vietnamese companies. And even I was told that Masan Group hired a Vietnamese American banker from New York who was born in America.
Yeah.
Learned how to speak Vietnamese as one of his CEOs of his companies.
Oh, okay. Yeah,
So
Masan Group is huge.
Yeah, right.
Huge.
So there's many opportunities, and I think for your audience of Vietnamese overseas who are looking to come back here and work, there are many opportunities, and the pay is getting much, much better.
Yeah. Kind of leading between the next thing of jobs and business is for the foreigner coming here, do you have any recommendation or advice on just adjusting to the culture, or how the culture the working culture, business culture may be different when they come? How do they adjust quickly? Do you have any advice on that?
I think the best way to adjust quickly is to be open-minded. Many of the foreigners who come here are hired for their specific skill sets, especially soft skills and their openness and critical thinking, right? But however, if you come here and you use that critical thinking too much, then you won't be open to the nuances of Vietnamese employees and the Vietnamese mindset. Even though it's changing, it's modernizing, but it's still 20, 30 years of culture. So I would say you have to be very open to the Vietnamese culture and the language and also the lifestyle, right? I think in the South here it's much easier to adapt to in Ho Chi Minh City because it's really a cosmopolitan city where much more open. But if you're going to work in Hanoi, it's much different, more traditional, more closed culture than it is here. So picking the place that you live is also important. And then lifestyle. Also, I think going to explore a lot more outside of just your colleagues, expanding your networks to understand how other expats are adapting to life in Vietnam is also critical. Yeah, openness and exploring more would help you adapt faster to working in Vietnam. And I would add on to that for the Vietnamese overseas specifically, they have the biggest time because they have preconceived...
the hardest time?
They have the hardest time more than non-Vietnamese overseas because they have a preconceived notion of what Vietnam is. I myself included personally as well, where I thought I knew the language, I thought I knew the culture because I'm Vietnamese. So I had a really hard time opening up to understanding the Vietnamese now, the modern Vietnamese, and in the last 10 years. So right when I finally opened up, I started learning more, understanding more of the nuances. So I say specific for Vietnamese overseas is you need to really open up and also challenge your preconceived notions of what Vietnam or the Vietnamese people are in the language prior to coming here and working.
Very interesting.
Yeah, or else it'd be super frustrating.
Yeah. I think no matter what, you get super frustrated at times. It's very different. You have to adjust. So in terms of business, in terms of like starting a business, do you have like a minimum amount you would recommend for people to, if they want to start a business, you need at least this to get started?
I always believe investing the least amount of money and getting the best returns.
Oh, that's what you believe. Okay, I like that. That's a great idea.
You don't need to beat a dead horse. You don't need to be a venture capital fund. You don't need to put in a lot of money. Right? Because the resources are much more inexpensive here in Vietnam. The barriers to entry is a little bit lower. So therefore, I don't believe you have to put in 100,000 if you can do it for 25. Right? Just depending on your business.
Let's say for like a small F&B, something that's simple to start, a small coffee shop, a small little restaurant. Do you have any sort of ballpark of what someone would need to do something like that?
Yes. So prime example, my coffee at Ken Coffee.
Yes, we are in Ken's coffee shop right now. And this is the bar. We're in Ken's bar right now.
On the bar side of the coffee shop. But the coffee shop costs about $35,000 from concept to construction to running and it becoming profitable.
Awesome.
So $35,000. Very hard to open something like that in the U.S. for sure.
Yeah, and I would say
cities.
this is a nice looking coffee shop that's well equipped. So if you wanted to go bare bones, you could probably do it for $15,000, less than that.
$20,000,
Yeah, okay.
and you can get a decent return on investment, and it will give you a lifestyle business.
And we are in District 1 too, so we're in a great area. We're very, very center, so okay. Okay, cool. Are there any businesses that you would recommend to start in that you see are as an easier barrier to entry? If someone was just kind of open and they just wanted to start something, but they didn't really have a direction yet.
Okay. So my philosophy of advising is, if it's low barrier to entry, anybody can come in.
Yep.
Then super high competition.
Yep.
Right?
Yep.
So I always believe that find something a little bit more niche, a little bit higher end market where you have less competition.
Yep.
Slightly higher barriers to entry. Or you figure you want to do a lifestyle business. You just want to have a bar to go to, a coffee shop. One thing is, I think low investment, high return is digital marketing.
Yeah.
Or agencies.
Yeah.
Right? You don't need a lot of staff or fixed costs, but you can charge a good amount of money for real quality work.
Yep.
It's very difficult to give general advice.
I understand.
But I feel the niche market is professional services, such as lawyers, accountants, marketing, different agencies where you're using your intellectual property to create a business that has low fixed costs.
Understood.
That is their editing, video editing, transitioning, SEO. I think a lot of those type of online businesses, digital, can make you good money due to your intellectual property and your creativity with low physical investments.
Cool. Are there any particular strategies or methods that you could recommend if someone was trying to find an existing business to buy and to take over?
Oh, it's much more difficult here in Vietnam because there's not the Better Business Bureau or credit scores or transparency in looking at debts and liabilities.
I see.
So my recommendation is, don't rush into buying a business. Really just sit there.
Yeah.
Go to that business for multiple days in a row.
Yeah.
And just observe the traffic.
Yeah.
To see if really the numbers are real that they're proposing to you.
Yes.
That would be one way. If you're doing a larger acquisition, then of course having a legal finance team to do the due diligence would be necessary.
Is there a site or is there a way that people advertise their businesses for sale that's easily scannable?
Currently, I do not see any.
Okay.
Like in the U.S. business brokering services, it's really just through business brokering services, accounting firms, law firms that have access to information. But a centralized site, there's really none that I know of that tells you the price, basic information.
Yeah. If someone was interested, could they contact you? Do you have any, like a Rolodex of that, of any business for sale, or is that not your area?
Yes, so we actually started about 2 years ago doing business brokering.
Okay.
Aside from the due diligence and mostly trying to help our existing clients
Yeah.
to raise funds, sell off equity, or sell off their entire business for exits. So we do have right now about 15 to 20 on the list, ranging from 150,000 to $80 million.
Wow.
Yeah, different sizes that we have on our, and that's one way that I get into businesses too. So we're angel investors. We also have venture capital and private equity firms that we help companies exit.
Okay. Yeah. In terms of a foreigner trying to start a business here, what are the challenges that they have? Are there certain requirements? So they don't need the certificate, I'm assuming? So how would they go about that? What are the restrictions?
So first, for them opening up a business is the ownership structure, whether they can own 100% or 51% or 49%. That's going to impact a lot.
Yes.
So depending on your industry, whether it's restricted or not, whether it's on the list of the WTO requirements.
Okay.
2 is the tax structure is so much different in Vietnam than anywhere in the world that I know of.
Really?
The biggest thing is red invoicing.
Yeah.
Right? So you have to actually write an invoice based on your tax ID number. And before it used to be worse. It used to be a piece of paper. You have to keep all of these receipts in order to deduct taxes. Right now it's digital. You can do it online. It's much better. So that. 2 is, there's a lot of, I would say, hidden cost of doing business in Vietnam depending on the industry you're in.
Okay.
working with different government agencies,
Okay.
different strategies on how to do business that you would not think of in, let's say, a
you have an
transparent
example?
developing country.
Do you have an example of that?
Let's say sensitively, if you're running a bar,
Yes.
for example, you're selling balloons
Okay.
at a bar,
Okay.
right? It's not illegal,
Yes.
but it's actually not fully legal,
Okay.
right? You
Yeah.
can't sell drugs,
Yeah.
that's illegal.
Right.
You can sell alcohol, that's legal.
Right.
But the gray area is balloons,
Okay.
which is proliferating in Vietnam and
Yes.
also Ho Chi Minh City at the bars, at the clubs.
Yes.
So what would you do is you need to know what is the price of the penalty
Ah,
before
I see.
you sell it.
I see.
And then you determine that in your cost.
You gotta
so it's
factor
a
in the
gray
cost, yeah.
area, right? It's a gray area.
You gotta build it in. That's
You
so
build it
funny.
in, so
and
you
you
gotta
just
know.
assume you're gonna pay the penalty 4 times a month or 8 times a month or something.
Correct. Or per
every
bottle,
night.
per bottle. They go by per bottle.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
specific that one per bottle.
That's so funny.
And then there's a monthly penalty for alcohol, right? There's alcohol with a label, and there's alcohol that you don't have a label or a stamp,
Uh-huh.
right? If you go into that gray area, you got to know how much the penalties are. It's really just cost calculation
Okay.
and mitigation of risk.
Okay, so that's just business practice. That you just once you know the issues you come up, you price it in. That doesn't seem outrageous to me.
But the problem is foreigners don't have the connection,
No.
the knowledge,
No.
nor the language skills to
Yes.
go get that information.
Yes. Yes.
And that's why I get complaints all the time about our foreign clients and many other clients saying, I go to 3 people, they give me 3 different answers,
Right.
3 different prices, 3
Right.
different timelines.
Right.
I don't know who to trust.
Right.
And that is the big issue in a country that is developing,
Yeah.
that is considered kind of high fraud. How do you know who to trust and
Right.
which companies to work with?
Right. And when you talked about ownership before, 100%, 51% versus 49%, is there any, so every business field has different rules about percentage of ownership for the foreigner, is that correct?
No, there will be categories. So under the Vietnamese business law,
Yeah.
there would be categories that are less than 49%, such as the film industry. So there'll be categories. So it'll be very
Okay.
specific. It's based on the NASDAQ codes on the industry that you're working in. They'll
I
give
have no
us
idea
all-
what NASDAQ
Oh,
means.
okay. So it's pretty much your importer.
Yeah.
That's one category.
Yeah.
Distributor
Yeah.
is one category.
Okay.
Logistics of trucking
Yeah.
is another category.
Okay, okay.
So there are all these categories that
Yeah.
you can click off when you form your company.
Yeah.
So we usually ask them, what are you doing specifically?
Yeah.
Especially with Americans, because American law, you can do anything that's not against the law.
Right.
It's very easy.
Right.
But now you have to specify exactly, and they'll have different capital contribution rates and also limitations on ownership. So they would have to let us know exactly what they're doing. Then we will help them select to try to minimize capital contribution and to maximize percentage ownership for control.
So if you have a business that goes into multiple directions, it may be advantageous to separate it into 3 different businesses, so you can have 100% of one and then 49 of the other?
Possibly, yes.
Okay, I see.
Yes.
Is there any sort of general category that's easily understood that, okay, I can own 100% of a food and beverage business, but I can own 49% of a movie business or something? Is it easy to categorize, or is it just too complicated?
I would categorize into 3 main ones.
Okay.
So no ownership at all in
No ownership. Okay.
infrastructure,
Okay.
media.
Okay.
So
Media?
Media.
Okay.
Yeah, hard to open up a media company
Okay.
in Vietnam.
Not social media, just television.
Yeah, television, radio,
Okay, okay.
billboards,
Understood.
anything that media content creation.
Understood.
Oil and gas.
Okay.
Even healthcare is very difficult.
Yeah.
And then education.
Okay.
Those are tough areas that I would say almost nearly prohibited, and you need a joint venture local partner
Okay.
to do.
Okay.
What I would say 51% and above, so the film industry is one of the areas. Digital, social media, that one you would need. Event planning,
Okay.
that one would have to have 51% and above.
Okay.
I would say you can have more than 51% and above in the rest of the areas. So F&B is very easy to open.
When you say 51% above, can it be 100? Can it be 100%?
So it really depends.
Okay.
Yeah, it depends on whether it can be 100 or not.
Okay.
So I can tell you some of the 100% ownership.
Yeah.
Business consulting company.
Okay.
You can do limited, if you limit your scope of your digital marketing
Yeah.
to certain areas, you can do 100%.
Okay.
Restaurants, bars, you cannot. Massage, you can own 100% foreign.
Okay.
So now I would say about 70%. There's a list
Yeah.
that is non-restricted,
Yeah.
and there's a list that is restricted areas.
Okay.
And Vietnam continues to limit and lower the restricted areas throughout the years
Okay.
with every iteration of the new law,
Interesting.
which is a good sign.
Yeah. Yeah. It's great. And just the idea, I think a lot of people have the assumption that they can't own a business. like 100% or even more than 51. So the idea that it's possible is great. I'm sure a lot of people will be excited about that.
But I would recommend having a partner, at least 10%, 20%, speaks the language, has interest in building the business, has money and skin in the game.
Okay.
Will be much, much safer.
Okay.
Rather than just take it on 100%. The risk, or actually the benefit of making $100,000 versus the risk mitigation of making $80,000 and giving somebody else $20,000 will actually further your business in Vietnam and the opportunities.
For sure.
Yeah. So don't be too greedy is what I'm saying with our...
Are there any particular fields that you feel have the potential to really do well here or boom in the short term or longer term?
Yes, so like I said, digital marketing
Yeah.
I think is huge. Fully understanding the algorithms of TikTok and Facebook and YouTube.
Yeah.
I think that will grow tremendously. Technology, like if programming or any technology, AI, chat, GPT space, you will definitely grow. And then going back to traditional business that will have many opportunities is manufacturing. But scaling up in your technology and manufacturing will still grow in Vietnam, especially due to the China-US trade war. So opening up a factory or just sourcing here from garments to equipment in Vietnam will be a great opportunity for foreign businesses to establish here to either export or to establish locally. And then finally, I think franchising. Vietnam is getting to the stage where middle income or what we call the Henry, which are, have you heard of that term yet?
No.
So Henrys are high earners, not rich yet. What we would call like yuppies or middle class in the States.
That's a funny term.
So they make roughly between $2,000 to $5,000 a month individually, which is considered high.
Yeah.
They can spend on luxury goods, on foods, on travel, but they're not rich yet.
Yeah.
They can fully afford apartments or homes yet.
Yeah.
They're the biggest spending group and the biggest growing group right now,
Yeah.
targeting that particular audience in Vietnam is the biggest.
So for the franchising element, how did that tie in? What do you mean about franchising?
So with the franchising is these, similar to the US, when we sell franchises, we sell it to corporates who are busy and they're specialized in the area, but they have a chunk of disposable income. They don't know what to do.
Yes.
You want a passive investment that is safe,
Yeah.
that has a little bit of kind of a branding to it,
Yeah.
where you can say, I own this shop. You know, I do my full-time business, but I own this shop that makes me a few $100 a month, and then I'll build up my franchise portfolio.
I see.
So as the middle class grows or the Henry class grows, franchising will grow.
I see.
And that's where I see the area, convenience stores, pharmacies, educational programs that are less than, so the price point in US is about 250,000, but in Vietnam I say less than 100,000. That you can get a decent return. You can expand the brand and you can build up your franchise portfolio.
It's amazing to me when you see a restaurant now, all of a sudden you see like 7 locations of that spot. People, even just the small business local is just expanding so quick. It's very interesting to see that.
But they want to bring in systems.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
They trust the systems, especially Japan. So Japanese is one of the most systematic countries and processes and systems, and Korea is very good at it as well.
Yeah.
So as you can see, the successful countries as a whole in Vietnam are the ones with great systems that can train low-level staff very quickly.
Yeah.
So that's why the Koreans and Japanese franchises do extremely well in Vietnam.
Yeah, interesting. For the digital nomad, would you say it's wise to incorporate if they wanted to in Vietnam? Is that something that is advantageous, or should they be looking for other places to do that?
It depends on the scale of that particular business that you run. I would say to not incorporate as long as possible and to keep the revenues offshore. Even though you're creating content here in Vietnam, but your audience, especially YouTube.
Okay.
So YouTube partnership, you can decide you have a YouTube Vietnam channel or you have a YouTube America channel where you get paid in the States and you pay your taxes worldwide.
Yeah.
I don't think it's necessary to incorporate in Vietnam as long as you find a way to have a visa that allows you to go in and out and to stay longer, right?
Because I mean, I see so many people now trying to see Vietnam as a home base just because it's got a great location, it's good lifestyle, and then they do their digital work, whatever it is, and being freely able to travel. So it seems like it's becoming, people want it to be a home base, whether it's easy for them or good, intelligent for them to do it. It seems like people are attracted to it.
Yes. I mean, the cost of living, the lifestyle, the assistance you can get as well.
And the flights. People just like to be able to travel so easily to all over the area.
Correct.
Yeah.
And that's why the immigration policies need to improve, and there's a lot of pressure to improve.
Yes.
if you want more tourists and professionals and people to come here and work.
Yeah.
So I would say, unless if you have a whole team here, about 3 to 5 people,
Yeah.
where you don't want to just pay them in cash all the time or
Yeah.
just transfer,
Yeah.
then you would form a company here and then build out from there to be your base. Then you would form a company in Vietnam. But
Okay.
if before you get to the level you're just doing contracting work or per project,
Yeah.
I wouldn't say it's necessary to form a company here.
Okay. Trying to moving on to real estate. Is there anything else you wanted to say about opening a business or any advice you want to give there?
So I would say from a timeline standpoint, in the next 12 months or so, Vietnam is going to continue to go through the trickle-down effect of China's failure in the real estate market will trickle down into Vietnam even harder than it is now.
Yes.
So I would say don't open any new businesses in the next 12 months, but it's a good time to set up so that when the economy starts picking up again, to open right away, to be the first mover.
Yeah.
After the pandemic.
Yeah.
Because rental prices are still relatively inexpensive.
Yeah.
In many of the areas. There's still a lot of people looking for jobs that are very talented.
Yeah.
In Vietnam, and then the changing immigration policies. So it's good to do research, get your business plan together, and then open up. Earliest 6 months, but 6 to 12 months from now.
I see.
Would be a great time to come in and compete.
I see. So for the person that wants to stay longer term in Vietnam and they foresee buying real estate as a good strategy of getting that visa or making yourself more established here, would it be better for them to buy a home versus a condo versus commercial real estate? Is there one that's more advantageous for someone who wants to stay here long term, whether they are foreigner or Vietnamese overseas or something like that?
So there are restrictions regarding foreign ownership in property in general.
Okay.
That we specific categories. So land, in order to own land in Vietnam, you have to be a full Vietnamese citizen, which means passport, family book, and a national ID.
So not property, but the land itself.
Yeah, the land itself.
Yes.
Or what we call landed property. So single family homes, or Vietnam they call villas.
Mm-hmm.
The home attached to a piece of land, a foreigner cannot own that either.
Can they own the building on it, but not the land?
No.
Okay.
Right? So you can't. So now it goes to apartments and condos.
Mm-hmm.
So which means the land is owned by the developer and you only own the
Yes.
pink book
Yes.
instead of the red book
Yeah.
that foreigners are permitted to own. But there are quotas for each of the projects and then the provinces as well on foreign ownership, and it's roughly about 30 to 40%.
I see.
So foreigners cannot buy all the apartments in
Yes.
one building.
Yes.
Okay. Vietnamese overseas, like I said, if they can get their full legal rights as citizens, they have much more options.
So
in
if they
buying
just
in
have the
Vietnam.
passport, are they in the same situation as any foreigner in terms of purchasing a property?
Yes, with one specific exception,
Uh-huh.
is if they can get this document called the Certificate of Vietnamese Origin,
Okay.
they can buy one property or a condo or apartment under the Vietnamese quota
Uh-huh.
instead of the foreign
That's
quota.
cool.
So it's one very small exception for
Okay.
them.
And how about in terms of commercial real estate? Is it the same guidelines or is it a whole different thing?
So commercial real estate is a whole different, ball game. It's usually through a corporation or a business entity that is majority owned by Vietnamese and then partially owned by foreigners. Because the value and the price is much higher, and you can't get a loan. So it's mostly foreign corporations that will come in and do commercial development, or even renting commercial. Then that's much easier. That's just a lease. But if you're doing commercial development, then you would be majority Vietnamese owned company, and then it'll be a minority foreign owned.
Okay.
And they're big developers that do that. So
Okay.
Keppel Land, Capital Land, and many of these other foreign developers in Vietnam.
For the condo situation for the foreigner, do they own it or do they have a 50-year lease, or how does that work?
Yeah, so technically they have a 50-year lease with one renewal,
Okay.
which we consider 99 years
Okay.
for the foreigners as an individual,
Okay.
right?
What does that mean? So at the 50-year mark, they have a guaranteed renewal, or is it like, okay?
Yeah, so it's a guaranteed renewal.
So they don't have to be stressed about that 50-year point. So they get it for 99 years. And what happens at the end of that when the 99 years comes up?
So I asked this question as well.
So
No one knows.
When
'cause
did
no
this
one's at that
When
stage.
was the law created? So no one's gotten to that point yet. So
Correct. I
Right.
think it was in the 90s.
Oh, okay. So we got a long
Yeah.
time.
And then, but the new law regarding the foreigners is 2017.
Okay.
Yeah. No one actually knows what's going to happen
Right.
on the renewal or after 99 years.
Right. And then you're assuming the condo's there in 100 years too, which who knows?
Correct. Yeah.
Right. In terms of financing for a residential property, whether it's going to be, we already know the structure for a foreigner or for a Vietnamese citizen now. in terms of financing, is there financing available for a foreigner if they're trying to buy a condo? Is that something that's possible?
From the local Vietnamese banks, no. International banks don't lend to foreigners.
Okay.
But there are a few companies that are financial institutions that do it.
Okay.
So one that I know of is called Home Base. They're a Singaporean company with an office here in Vietnam. And they do it more, so similar structure, 35% deposit.
Okay.
And then they'll loan you 65%.
Okay.
But instead of a banking instrument where you have a promissory note, they will actually be a joint venture in a company.
Okay.
So it'll be capital contribution 35%, and the other one put in 65%, and that's considered a loan. You make monthly payments to them. So it's a slightly modified version of a loan for the purchase of property.
Yeah.
But for all intents and purposes, you're doing down payment and you're making monthly payments.
I see. Yeah. Do you have any idea of the ballpark interest rates for someone like that in this currently at this time for them?
It's about 2 to 3 points lower than Vietnam's rate. So
Okay.
you're looking at between about 8 to 12 right now.
8 to 12, so 2 to 3 points lower for the foreigner.
Yeah.
Okay. And how about for the overseas Vietnamese who's gotten their citizenship? How about for the overseas Vietnamese who's getting their one exception that they're allowed to buy a condo? What's their options?
So they'll for that one regarding the loan, they're still treated like a
Treated like a foreigner, so they
Yeah.
still have to go through that example.
Correct, and they still can't get loan in Vietnam because they don't have any credit.
I see.
Or any work here.
And how about for the person that has gone through and gotten their citizenship?
Then they still can't. They don't have any credit. If
they just got here,
if they just got here, if they've been living here for a while, and
Yeah.
have a company, they can build credit
Okay.
or what's called the internal credit system of the banks.
Yeah.
To allow you to, if you open a company,
Yeah.
if you pay yourself payroll, or you work for a company,
Yeah.
and then you have the full right, you can go to a bank and get
Yeah.
a loan, like a local.
How about
business.
if a foreigner opens up a business and then they use the business to buy a property? Can that work out then in that situation? Could they buy a commercial property in that way?
Yes,
The
that's
business
current,
could-
that's the current structure right
Okay.
now that's used for most foreigners
Okay.
to do commercial development and purchase.
Okay.
Yeah.
And I think you kind of already said this. A foreigner cannot buy land in any situation, not at all.
No.
Can a foreigner own 49% of land if they have a Viet partner?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
Through a company vehicle.
I see. Is there any areas of the country that are easier for a foreigner to buy land or to start a business? Or harder? Is there ones that are easier or harder?
Well, definitely in the big cities, it's much harder. One is the price point is much higher, and then the regulations are much stricter. But if you go into a countryside and you deal with the local provincial government, then you might be able to. In some cases, I've seen foreigner on titles. I don't know how it happened, but it must have been some sort of relationship between that individual where they were actually on title to a property. The foreign name, fully John Smith. So that was quite strange, but I think that's just based on relationships.
I've
Can get it done.
I've heard mixed information about locals being able to actually own the land 100%. Is there always some sort of contract between the local and the government, or it can, like my mother-in-law, I believe, owns her farmland outright. Is that true? Can you own farmland outright, and then in the city, can you own the land outright, or is that always connected to the government in some way?
So I'll get super technical on the legal requirements
Okay,
and the law. So in Vietnam, you have what's called constructive ownership.
Okay.
So full ownership, which is called in perpetuity, full bundle of rights.
Yes.
So in Vietnam, the actual grant deed is called quyền sử dụng đất, land use rights.
Okay.
So the government technically owns all land in Vietnam
Okay.
as a socialist republic.
Okay.
And they give someone the rights, land use rights in perpetuity.
Okay.
But technically, they can take it back from you at any time.
Okay.
Okay.
Is that
However,
something-
it doesn't happen anymore
Okay.
due to the transparency in the law, social media, and various other factors.
Yes.
So let's say your mom, she does have rights to use it for the rest of her life.
Yeah.
She can sell, she can collateralize, apothecate, anything,
Yeah.
right? For I say 99.9% of her rights.
Yes.
There's that 0.1%
Yeah.
that the government will take it back for projects or what we call eminent domain in the United
Okay.
States, but without the same just compensation.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. And in the city, it works the same way? The same
Yeah,
Okay.
the law is the same for all of it now.
Is there anything else you wanted to elaborate on in terms of real estate for someone looking to purchase or buy, or any advice you have for them?
I would say one specific area that I forgot to mention that will grow is Airbnb. Vietnam is still very lax on the law. The tourism is increasing tremendously
Yes.
for Vietnam. And also, Airbnb hosts or operators take care of the property much better than a renter.
Yes.
So there's that advantage for folks who do Airbnbs
Yes.
and do it very efficiently,
Yes.
and they can make good profit margin.
Yeah.
Because the rental value, they can push down their rental value,
Yeah.
rent, and then increase the value for the owner and also get a good profit margin.
And I will say that most of the hosts that I've experienced with have not been the most professional and not kept the Airbnb up to a certain quality. So if you are good at it, there is definitely an opening for that, for sure.
Professional Airbnb superhost.
Good communication, no, what would I say, no room swaps when you get there or anything like that. There's definitely an opportunity for it there.
And I think the diversity of the properties available in the portfolio, you can have, the city properties, you can have the beach properties,
sure.
you have mountain properties.
Yeah.
So you can really create a portfolio for the customer base to really enjoy all of Vietnam within your ecosystem. So I've seen quite a bit of more professional Airbnb operators come to Vietnam.
Yeah.
I think that's a good space.
Yeah. We've had people commenting that they are not a Vietnamese citizen, but they have a family member who passed away and had land and is gifting it to them. Can they take it? What are the challenges that they're going to encounter?
Yeah, so we actually been seeing this a lot in the last 5 years.
Yeah.
Foreigners, mostly Vietnamese overseas,
Okay.
who came to do business in Vietnam, and somehow they got to own the land, and they passed away, and their children are inheritance beneficiaries. So the big problem in Vietnam right now is they legally cannot be entitled to the land.
Okay.
Right? Foreigners cannot.
You saw
Even
this
Vietnamese
weird
overseas.
situation that you saw at one time, or where you saw a foreigner on a title, but this is not going to be a common occurrence.
99%.
Yes.
They can't be on title.
Okay.
They're actually the beneficiary. The courts, estate courts, will recognize that you're the beneficiary to be able to dispose or do with this particular piece of land, but you can't be on title.
Okay.
So you have to actually work with the local family members here in Vietnam. That is prime example. A brother or the father came to Vietnam, did business, and then he passes away, and their aunts here in Vietnam of that particular child. And there's some famous cases that we represent now too. The child, daughter, can only sell, so they'll get a power of attorney, and they'll use, hopefully they have a will or a trust in their foreign country that establish their inheritance rights.
Okay.
Then they have to work with a family member here that have to give them power of attorney to sell the property.
Yeah.
And then distribute the proceeds to the various heirs.
So there's no way that if they had any sentimental value or saw themselves living there, they could not own that property. They have the option to, they have the ability to sell it and get the income from it or the profit from it, but they can't take it over.
So in the circumstance of Vietnamese overseas, and we've done it, is we got them the passport, the national ID, and then they were able to be entitled to that particular property.
Okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
but it's very rare because the process takes 9 to 12 months, and by that time, the property's already been disputed, and they want to sell it right away.
Yeah.
We just help one family actually stay on. So there's one of the 5 family members, and one of the families were living there, and the husband passed away, and they thought the other members were going to kick him out.
Yeah.
But then we established her inheritance rights to stay on the land for the rest of her life, and they all agreed. Which is called lifetime use of a property, but not ownership.
Something that people do experience is that it's relatively easy to bring money into Vietnam, but there are challenges if you're trying to take money out of the country. Do you have any advice or comments you can say on that?
Sure. So if you want to get money out legally after you've brought it in, then you have to make sure when you brought the money in that you have all the documentation.
Okay.
Okay. And I'll separate a few examples from a business standpoint and also from a personal standpoint.
Okay.
And then as local Vietnamese citizens, how they can get the money out legally.
Okay.
So from a business standpoint, if you're opening a company in Vietnam, you're doing a joint venture and you're capitalizing the business.
Okay.
To do it legally, you would have to go through getting an investment registration certificate, enterprise registration, and going to the State Bank of Vietnam.
Okay.
What you do is you get the license, and to transfer in, you would transfer to the State Bank of Vietnam. They would approve your IRC, ERC. Then that money will be transferred into your local bank, and it will be capitalized.
Okay.
Right? Then when you dissolve that company, then you can transfer out your initial capital contribution legally.
Okay.
Right?
Yeah.
The profits, you have to show that you pay taxes fully. Then you can transfer your profits out as well.
Okay.
Most of that is real estate transactions.
Okay.
Where they have a start date and an end date.
Right.
Right? If you open up a business, it's much harder because you don't know when you're going to close. Unless you specifically know I have a specific project, I need to open a joint venture, I'll close it.
Right.
Then that's how you get money in and out legally.
Right.
From a personal standpoint, then there are many legal money transfer service companies that are licensed here in Vietnam as well.
Okay.
Where you would transfer money to them, they would transfer money from somewhere else into your U.S. bank account. Right? They have a money transfer license in Vietnam.
Okay.
And they'll charge you a fee for it. And the banks will work with the bank in the foreign country, Australia, US, or other. That's another legal way to transfer your money out. And then finally, for Vietnamese citizens, if you have a Vietnamese spouse in Vietnam, then they can actually transfer under 3 ways. One is you have a student studying abroad. You can transfer money for tuition when you prove that they are accepted by the school and they have tuition to pay. The Vietnamese citizen can transfer out to their child studying abroad.
And how about for their daily expenses and things like that?
Yes.
Okay.
So
Okay.
tuition and daily living expenses, you have to prove it.
Okay.
2 is you can transfer to a family member that emigrated to another country.
Okay.
So that's about 70,000 a year, and the number changes.
Okay.
And then the final one is you can just transfer for no reason $25,000 to a family member living abroad.
A year?
A year.
Okay.
But you can do multiple family members.
Okay. Is there, in terms of the transferring, or is there a recommendation or something that you find the best? Is it just bank transfers or something specific?
There are specific banks that are stronger because they do a lot more work. I would say MB Bank, Military Bank, is one of the strongest in regarding foreign transfers.
It sounds strong.
Yeah. Yes. So in Vietnam, as you know, connections are important.
Yeah.
And they have become our go-to for that particular work.
Okay.
And then in general, that money exchange going outside, that they're one of the strongest, legal, fully protected.
Okay. One thing I forgot to ask you about or comment on is, so with the visas you've already discussed, but then we also have the business visa and there's an investment visa as well, right?
Correct.
Can you elaborate, those are different things, can you elaborate what they are, what they grant you, why do I want that?
So the investment visa requires you to actually invest into Vietnam.
I see.
So there's different categories. So I
Yeah.
say the 3 billion, 10 billion, and then there's there's DT4, 3, 2, and 1.
3 billion is the lowest amount, so that's around 120,000.
Roughly.
Okay.
Yeah, now with the bad exchange rate.
Yeah. Okay.
Or good exchange rate. And then DT1 is the highest, that's a $5 million investment.
Okay.
And you can get it 5 years up to 10 years
Okay.
at a time.
But before, if someone was trying to start a business here, a small F&B for 30,000 or 50,000, they're not getting an investment visa in that situation?
Well, it just depends on the law firm kind of proving your case of why this is a legitimate business. So it's up to 120,000, but it's really how we prove the case.
Oh, the 3 billion is up to 3 billion.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
So it can
So
be
it
like
can
one,
be less than
technically
that.
it can be $1.
Oh, okay, okay,
But
okay.
nobody, we've never done one for $1.
I see.
So our lowest is 25,000. I remember it was a digital marketing company, and they showed that they had clients abroad. They're hiring like 1 or 2 employees. So
Yeah.
that one we were able to get. But our minimum, the rule of thumb is about 50,000 US dollars.
Okay. So besides the requirement of needing that visa to do the business or to make the investment, what other advantages do you have when you have the investment visa?
So you can stay here 1 year the entire time.
Okay.
You can also...
And that's the rolling 1 year.
That's
You
a
keep it
rolling 1 year
yeah.
renewal. Yeah.
Okay.
So you can stay here for extended period of time. You can file your taxes here, so you can start build kind of credit
Yep.
in Vietnam as well.
Okay.
And then you can hire employees.
Okay.
Right. Whereas in the business visa or the 90-day visa,
Yeah.
you are only allowed to explore.
Yeah.
You can't sign contracts. You
Yeah.
can't hire employees. You can't do any.
Oh, you can't even sign a contract.
No.
Even if you're here for import or export for some reason, you can't make a deal at that point?
Yeah, you can't make a deal legally. You cannot make a deal.
Interesting.
But of course, depends on the checks and balance
Okay.
systems. But you're only here for business exploratory meetings.
I see.
Not
see.
income generating.
Okay. There's a lot of people who want to retire, obviously. They want to come back. Or they want to come back, or they just want to live here because they love the place. So is there, we already talked about the options that they may have, and hopefully they get better. Is there like an expat group of retirements? Do you know anything about that? Is there like an over 65 thing going on here at all?
Not that I know of, but I definitely spend time with various groups that I know that just have coffee on a weekly basis,
Yeah.
and they talk about, so there's an academic group that I know.
Yeah.
They're mostly professors, Vietnamese overseas,
Yeah.
and they do research projects and they meet for coffee.
Uh-huh.
The beach towns, definitely there are
Yeah.
whole expat retired communities in
Yeah.
the beach towns. Nha Trang, Đà Nẵng, Hội An.
Can you comment on like any sort of healthcare system for the retirees or even just for the young foreigners too?
So I would definitely say that the healthcare system has improved a lot. We made a whole video on the comparison of the healthcare system for new families or with kids and then retirees.
Yeah.
The private healthcare system has increased dramatically.
Yeah.
In its quality, in its service, and also its marketing and branding, such as American International Hospital, the French Vietnamese Hospital, and it's a testament. The Thomson Medical Group out of Singapore made the largest purchase within the Vietnamese healthcare system, $570 million US to buy the entire FV French Vietnamese hospital system, including chiropractic, pharmacies, and clinics. $570 million.
How many FVs are there? I only know the one in D7. Is it throughout the country?
Their system, they've been acquiring a lot in order to do this bigger sale.
Wow, that's amazing.
From the hospital, the clinic, the chiropractic, they acquired ACC, the chiropractic center, and the pharmacy as well.
That's amazing.
So it's an ecosystem of healthcare.
Do you think that I guess for the retiree, someone who's here they plan to be here for the longer term, 2 years, 10 years, something like that. Would you recommend they need to get insurance or can they just pay out of pocket for all the private issues they may encounter?
I would recommend to get insurance. It's gotten a lot better, the insurance coverage, both in your home country with the international add-on, and then also getting a health insurance in Vietnam from one of the larger insurance companies.
Is there any you could recommend or speak on?
Prudential, Manulife, Chubb Life, or kind of the Allianz, kind of the four big global players that have good coverage, reasonable premiums. They have coverage both in Vietnam but also outside, in Thailand and Singapore. Yeah. If you need major heart surgery or brain surgery, then you would go to either Thailand or Singapore. But the rest of the normal checkups annually and treatments here in Vietnam are available and of good quality.
I think people would be shocked about the private healthcare system here. Recently, I had to fly to Japan. I just wasn't feeling well. I had a urine test, a blood test. I went to spoke to the doctor for like an hour. I got a COVID test as well, and I was like $24 or something. It was very inexpensive, and the healthcare system, it's everywhere. There's so many private offices opening up. It's very surprising to me. Right. Very cool. Very cool to see it.
It's definitely available in Vietnam that retirees can have access to in the big cities. Yeah. If you're in a smaller city, then you want to make sure you plan properly.
Yeah, it's very different.
Very different. The disparity in the healthcare system in the big cities and the small cities.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Okay, this is just a very random question, but if someone's traveling here, or they're coming to move to live, can they bring a pet? Can they bring a dog or a cat? Is that something that is allowed? Is it okay?
Yes, so they have to get a passport for their pet. So there's actually a pet passport for domestic animals to travel to Vietnam. Okay.
Is there any quarantine or anything? I'm sure there must be.
I don't believe so. During the quarantine period there is, but now it's similar rules. They get tested when they come. They have to have all the vaccinations, all their tests within their passports to be able to come in.
Great. So I think that's really it. Ken, I really appreciate your time. If there's any questions we didn't answer, leave them in the comments below. We'll try to get to them. If you have any specific questions that maybe I think would probably just require direct communication to Ken or his team himself. If someone wants to reach you about specific questions or opening a business, how would they reach you?
We have our YouTube channel, we have our email, we have our phone number.
Yes.
So we can just provide all of that in the link or description, and they can contact us.
Okay. Thank you so much, Ken. Thank you so much. I really appreciate your time.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Very nice to meet you.
Great.
Thank you.
Pleasure.